Good morning, my creative lovelies, or whatever time of day it is that you end up listening to this episode, and welcome back to another episode of The Designated Designer. I kind of disappeared for about a month from podcasting after I initially started it up, and it definitely taught me a lot. I wanted to come back full force in the new year and pick right up where I left off. And in taking some time off from doing the podcast, it allowed me to kind of take a step back and look at it as a whole, more like, what do I want to achieve with it? Whose lives do I want to help change? What kind of messaging do I want to tell? What kind of story do I want to tell? And I feel like where I was going with it when I first started everything up was a really great solid direction to get me started, but I don't feel like it's going to really accurately capture kind of everything I'm going to be trying to do with my brand in the future. So stay tuned. Things may change and shift, like cover art and maybe titles and things like that, but you learn as you go, and that's a beautiful part of the journey. So today I want to talk to you about a little bit of a different topic. Initially, my plan was to cover the design contract in this next episode, but in, the holiday season and everything and getting to take some time away, I kind of just wanted to reassess and readdress kind of what I want to achieve overall with this podcast and my brand, because, drum roll, exciting news, I am currently undergoing another rebrand this year. Woohoo! Super, super exciting. The reason why, because I know most of you are probably like, but Jen, didn't you just rebrand this time last year? Yes, you would be correct, internet stranger. However, I feel like in the course of the last year, I did so much brand work, and I'm so, so thankful. I worked with so many amazing clients, and I really got to understand brand identity on a whole deeper level. And when I initially designed my rebrand last year, I didn't have this broad understanding of brand identity and what I enjoy about brand identity and the heart that I put into brand identity. I learned all of that stuff over the course of the last year, and having learned all of those lessons and really start to understand and figure out who I am, because that's a hard part. A lot of people, a lot of influencers are like, just find who you are, and I feel like that is just as much of a blanket sweep as telling a 17-year-old to figure out what they want to do for their future when they're trying to pick what college to go to. So it was really hard to kind of find myself, and it took me a whole year just to get an idea of who I am. And now that I finally feel like I have at least a direction to go in, I'm going to spend the next handful of years fully developing who I am. And I'm sure it's going to change and evolve just the same as I change and evolve. So here we are. Podcast may pivot a little bit from the original story and direction with the whole designated designer thing. I might keep the name, I might not. I don't know. We're all here for the journey, right? So this episode, I kind of wanted to talk about like a New Year's recap, and that was my initial plan after my initial plan to do the contract, which I will get to an episode where I talk about contracts. It is super important. I'm not skipping that. I'm just kind of putting this little bonus episode in between to give you guys an idea of where I'm hoping to go with the podcast in the future. So initially, I was going to do a fun little New Year's recap and kind of just go over my first year in business and the ups, downs, goods, bads, all that good stuff. And I did film the episode, but I wasn't really happy with the way that it came out. So then I pivoted again, and now I'm just going to do an episode where it's kind of like a little story time, because I was working this morning on my rebrand, and I had this thought kind of pop into my head, and I was really inspired by it. And I just kind of wanted to share that with you guys. So without further ado, let's dig into it. Like I said, I wanted to make this episode like a little story time. So I'm going to grab my coffee and tell you guys a story. This story goes back to about, I want to say 2018. I was still in college. I was getting my first internship. So it was like, I guess it was 2019. I guess it was 2019. It was like springtime 2019. And I was still in college, but the way that we had our final schedule as seniors, it was really weird because they had the 2 semesters. They had like the fall and the spring semester, but then they divided each semester in half. So we had like 4 quarters almost as seniors. And the reason that they did that was so that they could send the seniors out on internships as part of like the curriculum. And they would cycle. So a group would go out first quarter, a group would go out second quarter, third quarter, and so on. I ended up wanting to do my internship fourth quarter because I knew if I got to take a break from schoolwork, I would never want to go back. So I just wanted to save that until the very last quarter. So that way I got all of the homework and schoolwork and all that like fun stuff out of the way. And then I could just relax my last quarter. So it was springtime. I was working this internship out in Reading at a signage company. It was an amazing experience. And honestly, there were so many wonderful people there and I learned a lot. It wasn't necessarily what I was hoping to do someday or like pursue long term, but it certainly was an amazing like starter, fresh out of college type job. And once my internship came to an end, they did actually keep me as an employee and I got a proper title and everything like that. And I stayed there for about, I don't know, I want to say like 6 months, about 6 months before I made my move to the first wrap shop that I worked at, a little closer to home. But when I was at this place in Reading and I was still living in Kutztown at the time so that I could commute to my job, I found this Camaro. And it was on my drive from my parents' house to my apartment down in Kutztown. And I was so excited about this. It was truly like getting towards the end of college for me was a really surreal thing because I never felt like I belonged. I barely got accepted. I barely passed the art test to get into that college. So that was like a super awakening because at the time it's like I thought I was decent, you know, like I didn't think I was any Picasso, but I thought I was at least like average. And I was like not. I was so far behind. It was laughable. But I didn't let that stop me. I let that be my fuel to try harder and work harder and try to catch up with all the other kids. And it was vicious and grueling and brutal. And I had so many mental breakdowns. But by senior year, I could actually say that I caught up to everybody. I was really proud. But yeah, I would drive past this Camaro right on one of the main roadways. It was parked up on a hill, like a toy in a store, and you're walking past the glass storefront as a kid and you're just mesmerized. I really felt that way about this car. And every time I would drive past it, I'm like, that's my car. That's my car. I'm going to get that car someday. I was so excited about this car. And I really looked at it as like my little treat for all of the sacrifices that I made in college. Because there were so many. Like I never hung out with friends really during my actual active school time. I never really went out partying or drinking or any of that. I just did nothing but homework and cried. It was really, really tough. So by the end of it, knowing how many like experiences that I kind of sacrificed to catch up with all the other kids and get the good grades that I did and, you know, actually catch up and not be a dropout or, you know, like jobless. Like I worked so hard to build my portfolio and just get caught up with everybody because I was so far behind in both the technical skill of being an artist as well as the computer side of being able to use technology, because I had none of that, barely any of that. I went to a private school for my first like till high school, so elementary and middle, and we had like no technology. So adjusting to technology in high school was also a huge hurdle I had to overcome. Another time in my life I felt like I was massively behind and had to catch up, and I didn't let anything stop me. I caught up, and by senior year I was pretty fluent with everything, but still at a handicap compared to most of the rest of the world. So again, you know, that college experience, it was just really tough and hard to catch up. But by the end of it, I was like, you know what? I worked so hard. I busted my butt. I sacrificed so much. I cried gallons at that point, and I want to treat myself because that's not something I really ever did, ever in my life. We weren't poor growing up, my family, but we didn't have money for like nice things, like luxury things. Like all of our cars were used only about $2,000 or $3,000. You know, we never had a family car that was ever purchased at under 150,000 miles. So never had any kind of like new fancy cars or anything like that. Technology, like I said, was really hard to come by. Like my mom busted her butt and worked 3 jobs to scrape together enough money to buy us Nintendo DSs when we were little. And then from there, you know, it was just knockoff brand after knockoff brand. Never had like the iPod Nano or anything. And then years after its release, we were able to get an iPod Touch when the price came way down. But at that time, by the time we were able to afford it, they were almost already going out of style. So kind of came from not really being able to do luxury stuff. So I never really had a mindset about like treating myself. But after college and I was making my own money, I was waitressing, I was ready to do something for myself for once. And I did. I wanted to get this car. So I would drive past this car all the time. It was a beautiful red Camaro. It was a 5-speed manual. And my dad kind of like isn't necessarily the most supportive when you want to do something that's not like status quo, right? So I was all excited about this car, and even though it was my own money, even though I was, you know, making something for myself, I wasn't asking for money, I wasn't asking for anything but help because I didn't know how to like get a car registered in my name. So I just was asking for help with the registration process. That was it. I didn't want any help with funds. I had everything saved up. I was all ready to treat myself. And when I had asked him about this car that I had been dreaming of getting for the last couple weeks at this point, finally mustered up the courage to ask. And it was just the worst conversation. I was crying. Like, it was just like, so why do you need that? You're never going to drive that. It's a manual. You don't drive manual. You know, this is wasteful spending, blah, 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 blah. Like all this stuff. It was awful. And it hurt because that was one of the moments where it was like, I never treated myself. This is the first time I ever wanted to treat myself. And I was shot down so like ferociously. Not physically, just mentally, really difficult conversations. So that was really hard. And I just wanted to quit. I just wanted to give up and say, screw it, it's not worth the hassle. But this was the first time in my life that I was like, no, you earned this and nothing is going to come between you and your dream. And I was like, okay, so first attempt failed. What's the next step? And I just kept trying and trying and trying and trying. My dad wasn't going to help me. I was going to find friends that could help me. So at this time, I got together with a group of car friends and we hung out like all of the time. I loved getting to hang out with them. They were awesome. And they had a car trailer. The problem with the car was I didn't know if it was like viable to drive. I didn't have a mechanic that could come and look at the car before purchase because my dad wasn't helping me with it. So I didn't really know the status of everything. The guy told me that the diff needed to be repaired or fixed or worked on or whatever, but I didn't have any means to know how to do that because I don't know anything about cars. So I went out and I found these car friends and we got to form a great relationship and I got to do some design work for them. They helped me with some car work and in time, had the money, had everything ready to go, and they helped me go get that car. At the time, I still didn't know how to put a car in my name, and I still needed my dad's help for that part, but when I told my dad, I found a group of friends, and I have the money, and I want to do this, and they're going to help me trailer the car back to their place to get it worked on and tuned up and everything. And I'm going to do this, like, with or without your help. I am going to do this with or without your help. And it was at that point that he was like, all right, well, I can't change your mind then. And if you need my help, then I'll help you. So it took that much to finally get him on my side, but it did end up happening so that when we were ready to go pick up the car, my dad had met us there. And then we all went to the notary together so that way we could get everything transferred over and do all the stuff that we had to do. And then the car was mine. I couldn't even believe it. I couldn't believe with enough persistence and determination that I could actually achieve something like that, because littler version of me would have never imagined. Once dad said no, that was pretty much it. But as I started to grow into an adult, I realized how much control I have over my own universe. And this was really the first time I got a taste of that in my young life. And it changed a lot for me. So got the car. Let's fast forward a little bit. Got the car, got it all tuned up. Things kind of went south with this friend group. They had a lot of like drama and rumors and stuff going around, and somebody started some BS rumor about me and everybody believed it. So it was like a really rough falling out. Also, one of the first times in my life I had to experience a betrayal like that. I felt so betrayed. I felt like nobody was willing to listen to my side of the story. Nobody really wanted to hear it from me. They were just so willing to believe something about me that's not true. And I had so much love for this group of friends. So that was heartbreaking, honestly. In my opinion, I struggled so much over this. It was like going through a breakup, because I just felt so confused and lost and unable to understand why everyone was so quickly and readily willing to just hate me. And that changed a lot for me. That was a big experience in my life that kind of helped shape me into who I am today. So went through that. Well, the car's at their place, and it's a very not pleasant separation. So had to go get the car from their place. At the time, I still could not drive stick fluently enough to be, able to do that. Not to mention, like, had to have somebody drive me there to go pick it up, even if I could drive it off the property, which I couldn't at the time. So then I commissioned another really good friend of mine that's still my good friend to this day. And they went with me to go get the car. They knew how to drive stick really well. So they were the one to bring the car back to my apartment. And yet again, another time in my life that I was proven how much having friends that can help you makes such a huge difference. Like, if I didn't have that friend, I would have been shit out of luck. But they came in and helped me so willingly and selflessly, and it was amazing. And now I have the car at my place, but have to get the car home to my parents so that I could practice driving it around my valley that doesn't have a lot of traffic or crazy hills, so I could learn how to drive manual. And we ended up, me and my mom, it was just one day we were like having coffee on the porch together, and I was stressing about this car and stressing about this car and stressing about this car. And she's like, let's just go get it today, just on a whim. I was like, okay. Because she always has such a way of like exciting me about things that I don't want to do. I love my mom forever for that. That's one of her best qualities. And she's like, let's just go get the car today. Screw it. Like, let's just go do something crazy. And I was like, okay. So hopped in her car, drove all the way down to Kutztown. And I hopped in. She fired right up. And my mom like drove behind me the whole way, so that way she could keep other people off of me in case I stalled out or rolled back or whatever. She was like my little bumper buddy. So she drove behind me and gave me enough space in case I stalled or anything like that or rolled back. And we got this car. It was an hour drive, mind you. Okay, I had never driven stick in my life. Like, my friend that drove stick at the time that helped me get my car from that other friend's place, they taught me like basic stuff around town. They would take me to like 4-way stop signs and just have me start and stop on like a flat level place. Then they would take me to like a hill that was not on like a road. It was like a parking lot that had like a really steep hill, so I could stall as many times as, it took me till I learned how to pull out on a hill. So learned basic stuff in town, just enough to be able to get this car home. But it was like my first real trip in traffic, and it was an hour drive. And I got it home. Like, it was insane. And after that, I would try to take it out like every weekend, just around the valley, just to get comfortable driving it. And honestly, like, even though I was scared of it, and when I ended up getting rid of it, I was still kind of scared of it. But those drives around the valley, honestly, I look back so fondly on them, even though they were short little drives. And I can't really say that I'm great at driving stick. I definitely did it. And I proved to myself that I could do it, even though I didn't get great at it, because to get great at something, it takes a lot of time and practice. And I had other things in my life that I was trying to focus on. You know, I was still building the business at this time. It was just in its early stages. So I had time that I wanted to dedicate to that. I had time I wanted to dedicate to having a social life, because I starved myself of that all through college. Like, there were other things in my life I wanted to focus on, but at the very end, I did it. Even though I wasn't great at it, I still did it. And I was so proud of myself for that. So I would drive it around the valley and everything like that. And then got to a point where life changed. I met my fiance and ended up kind of like co-living, cohabitating with him down where he lives, which is like an hour and a half away from my parents. So that was really a tough transition. And then got a job in New Jersey at the time, so it made a lot of sense to move with my fiance, because he was very close to the border of Jersey at the time on the PA side, and I was very, very far away. It was almost like a difference, like the job was 45 minutes from my fiance's place, but it was like 2.5 hours from my parents' place or something insane. So it made sense to move in with him. So I did. And at that point, you know, the car was at my parents'. It wasn't being driven. It wasn't being taken care of. It wasn't being started. And my fiance is a car guy. And that's an amazing thing to have in a person, especially when you have a passion for cars. So he helped me get the diff fixed up. And at the time, we were still kind of planning on just keeping the car. But I kind of knew at a certain point that I wasn't going to be driving it a whole lot. My life was changing so rapidly and so quickly. I didn't have time for it. And I just wanted to see it go to somebody that would love it and take care of it and drive it. So I made the decision to sell it after years at this point. You know, I had this car for, oh my God, from 2019 until 2022. So like 3 years-ish, I want to say. It was a while. It was a handful of years. And finally made the decision to sell it, and you know, found somebody to sell it and all that stuff. But the whole reason that I'm telling you this entire long-winded story is it was so much more than a car to me. This was a journey that I went on within myself, from wanting something and doing everything in my power and stopping at nothing until I was able to achieve that dream, and then getting there, achieving the dream, and it not necessarily being what I was expecting or hoping for. You know, I was hoping to be a stick shift driver badass, you know, that was like so darn good at it. And that didn't end up happening, but I still proved to myself I could do something that I didn't think I was capable of doing. And this shaped me into who I am today as a business owner. Like, truly, I feel that if I hadn't had that experience, because it was so emotional, like every step of the process, it was like the car was at that friend's house and we had a falling out, and what am I gonna do? It felt like my world was caving in on me. And I figured it out. You know, with the right kind of friends, if you surround yourself with like-minded people and, you know, good, honest people, everything's figure outable. And this really was the first moment in my young adult life that I was shown all of these lessons through just trying to get a car. And it's crazy because sometimes, you know, it's the unexpected things in life that teach you these super, super valuable core lessons. And I just wanted to share that piece of who I am today with you guys on this podcast. And if you have a story that is similar, feel free to send me an email or reach out to me on any of my social channels. I would love to hear it. And if this story inspired you to just push harder and, you know, go after that dream that's been in your head for so long, because really that's what it felt like to me. I would drive past this car all the time. It felt like this dream I had in my head, and all I had to do was chase it. And I did. And I got there. Even though it wasn't what I was hoping for or expecting, I still got there. And that's the important part. So hopefully this inspires somebody out there. And like I said, the podcast is probably going to pivot a little bit now that I am adjusting my brand strategy, but it's all super, super good and super, super exciting stuff. So I will catch you guys in the next episode. Bye.